The Saturn return is about to begin. I start my Saturn return on March 7th. March 7th, anyone who has Saturn in Pisces, I'm looking at you, Timothy Chalamet. I'm looking at you, Jane Fonda. I'm looking at you, Keanu Reeves. We are all going through the Saturn return. Hey guys, it's me, Helena, and welcome back to Astrocartography with Helena, where we talk about astrocartography and relocation astrology. I want to talk today about Saturn because very soon, on March 7th of this year, 2023, Saturn will be moving into Pisces. For 5 years, the planet Saturn has been in Saturn-ruled signs. And this is going to be a huge change and a huge shift that we're all going to be feeling. Saturn is the planet of karma, maturity, responsibility, discipline. It shows where we're being challenged in life and where we're being pressured to become more mature and to take on more responsibility in some way. Specifically for these last 2.5 years, Saturn has been in the Saturn-ruled sign of Aquarius. And Aquarius is about the group mentality, group think. It's about groups of people, community, and humanitarian work. And because Saturn has been in Saturn-ruled signs for the last 5 years, I mean, this is a lot of discipline, seriousness, and also just this energy of condemning people. It is an energy, specifically the last 2.5 years, of us versus them. Saturn, the planet of restriction and responsibility and discipline, is going to enter this sign of Pisces. Pisces, the watery energy of compassion, forgiveness, and spiritual growth. Pisces is one of my favorite signs in astrology. It represents immense, almost over extreme selflessness, like wanting to give. Saturn going into Pisces, the energy is going to shift. It's going to feel a lot more emotional, a lot more intuitive, a lot more about the discipline and structure specifically revolving around spirituality. I predict that when Saturn is in Pisces, people are going to be feeling a lot more compassionate, a lot more spiritual, a lot more connected with themselves on an intuitive level. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if more and more people are kind of getting in touch with their intuition. And I myself have Saturn in Pisces, and so I will be entering adulthood starting this March for the next 2.5 years, and I'm really excited for it. And I actually want to talk in this video a little bit about how I am predicting my Saturn return will go, and I hope that by sharing this, I can, not only am I going to have like a little journal entry, a little vlog of, you know, me before the Saturn return and before, you know, right before I left childhood and entered adulthood, but I also hope that this video kind of gives you some examples of how you can look at your own natal Saturn to better predict what you may expect that will happen during your Saturn return. If you'd like to check out my blog post where I go more in depth about the Saturn return, what it represents, and how you too can predict your Saturn return, I will include a blog post down below, as well as check out my latest video on the Saturn return and how you can predict your own Saturn return, where I go more in depth about how you can do it yourself. As we talked about in the last video, you know, Saturn is about maturity and karma and becoming who you're meant to be. And it's really, you know, a lot of people say that you don't really fully become who you are until you go through your Saturn return, and I fully 100% believe that. Saturn return kicks your butt, and it is a time of like full becoming who you are here to be and to do the work that you're here to do on Earth. And so here are some things that I'm predicting for my own Saturn return. Well, first off, we want to look at the house where Saturn is placed. And for me, Saturn is in my 5th house of creativity, self-expression, content creation. It's also the house of children, reproduction, and sex. It's also the house of vices and recreation. So having fun, going out, partying, drugs, alcohol, casual sex, all of those things. That is the 5th house. And the thing that's really important when looking at your natal chart, and also when doing client work, is you want to kind of eliminate the topics that most likely will not be a theme. For me, drugs and alcohol, I have no vices. I've got Saturn in the 5th. I have no attachment or attraction to drugs and alcohol at all. I'm very like serious, disciplined, like I'm super serious when it comes to that shit. I don't allow that shit into my life. I'm not attracted to that. So I know that's not going to be an issue. Now, for some of you, if you've got a challenging Saturn in the 5th, maybe you're going through withdrawals. Maybe you're going through some sort of awakening to stop drinking or to stop doing drugs or to stop having casual sex or something. There can be an issue with one of those themes. So what can I eliminate? I can eliminate the drugs and alcohol. I can eliminate the partying because I'm not a partier. I can also eliminate children because I don't want children, which is interesting because the ruler of where Saturn is placed, Pisces, where I would look to see where Jupiter is. Jupiter's in my first house of the physical body. So I wonder, could it be something about that? Possibly the connection to the 1st and the 5th house. What I'm predicting before the Saturn return is I'm actually predicting maybe I'm getting more and more into creativity and self-expression, but in a bigger way. Like possibly creating the work I'm here to do on Earth, but very serious about it, like being very disciplined and serious and really focused on doing that work. So we've looked at the houses, right? The 5th house. We've located the ruler of where, Pisces is, Jupiter. It's in the 1st. So it's the physical body or the sense of self, the self-expression of the self. Those are going to be themes of my Saturn return. But let's now take it a step further. Let's look at the aspects that Saturn's making. So Saturn in my chart is making a trine to Jupiter, which is really lovely to see. That's getting some support from my most benefic planet, Jupiter. But then there's also a square to Mercury. And people who have Mercury square Saturn are usually kind of restricted in their voice. Like these people tend to be criticized or get very critical comments about what they think or what they say or how they express themselves. And so I wonder if I'm maybe thinking more about long-term consequences and I'm kind of maybe being a little bit more quiet or holding in my voice a little bit more. I predict that my thoughts will turn more serious and I may become extremely wary and cautious about the long-term after effects of what I'm saying or writing about. So I think I also pulled a tarot card for my Saturn return, and this was a while ago. I pulled a 3-card spread, and the energy of going from before to after was really beautiful. It was this beautiful maturation and growth of going from, I think it was the Page to the King or the Page to the Queen. But in that middle was the Hermit tarot card, and the Hermit is a time of going inward, of solitary, refinement, of going in and kind of like the monk on the mountain. It's meditation, it's being alone in private thought. And so I do expect me to have some time where I'm really being quiet.
And it's also really important to mention that when I'm looking at transits, when I'm making predictions for things, I look at a combination of things. So I do look at my transits, but I also consider my annual perfections, or which areas of life and planets are most activated at that point in time. And you can do this by year, but also by the month too. Like you can see here on Astro Gold software, you can see the specific month when certain planets and houses are activated, the Lord. And you can also see it by the month too. So for instance, I can look at specifically March of 2023. So March 17th to April 17th, I will have a Capricorn sign time. So I would look to Capricorn in my chart, which is the 3rd house. So it's going to be a 3rd house focus. And Saturn is the Lord, or it's the most activated planet at that specific time. So I do use annual perfections, which this is a great timing technique. I actually want to make a whole video on this. And then also I use zodiacal releasing too. And so while all of this is going on, in April and May specifically, that whole year I'm going through my hardest zodiacal releasing period. My malefic is Mars, and it's located in Aries. And so this makes Aries periods in zodiacal releasing to be the most challenging. And so I've got this challenging year from April of this year to July of next year. So, so I use a combination of things. There's also, in astrology, we call it the rule of thirds or the rule of 3, which is basically if you see something once, it might happen. You see something twice, the same story, the same theme being repeated, it probably has a likely chance of happening. If you see it 3 times, it's going to happen. It's just it's just a matter of what specific day it's going to happen on. But, looking at the combination of things, I'm looking at my zodiacal releasing, I look at my transits, and I look at my perfections. It all looks difficult. All 3 look challenging for me. This is my hardest ZR period. I have a Mars, my malefic is activated for the year, and Aries the sixth house of illness, day-to-day work. My hardest, house in my chart is activated. And then on top of that, I've got some gnarly transits. So that's something that's really important, in your astrology when you're making predictions or just looking at charts is using that rule of three of making sure you're looking at several different timing techniques and just making sure that it's showing up again and again, and it's not just a one-off thing. Because often if it's just one thing you see, it might happen, might not, but if you're seeing it repeatedly in many different techniques, it has a much more higher probability that it will be a preferable or a more unpreferable time.
It's also really good to look at where your Saturn is degree-wise. I have Saturn at 11 degrees. And so transiting Saturn is going to start moving toward my natal Saturn. And when it's applying or it's moving toward it, usually within a 3 to 5 degree orb, that's when I'm going to really start feeling the effects of that Saturn return. I'm actually going to pull up my natal chart so you can see what I'm looking at here. Saturn's at 6 degrees Pisces, and that's going to be around May 22nd. But as the weeks progress, it'll be applying or moving forward, and that's when it's most strong. When a transit is most strong is when it's applying to a planet rather than leaving it. So you could see, Saturn's going to go through retrograde. It's going to go back and refine things and look back at, what needs to change or get things done. But then it's going to be full on go time. And that's going to be, around February of 2024. Saturn is going to start moving. And you can see here it's at 10 degrees. My natal Saturn's at 11 degrees. So once it hits that 9, 10, 11 degree orb, that's when it's going to feel the strongest. And specifically, it's going to be on my natal Saturn in March of 2024. So that's when I expect it to be the worst. The other aspect I have to my natal Saturn is a trine to Jupiter. So this is kind of the energy of hard work leads to good work. There is good luck and blessings when you are really focused and disciplined and do the shit, do the hard work. It's that beautiful balance of having that idealizing something, right? Having that positive energy and belief in yourself with Jupiter trining Saturn, but it's Saturn's kind of being okay, but let's be realistic too. Let's think of a game plan. Let's think of how we're going to get there. So having that in a natal chart and also just transit wise, I think that's going to be really helpful for me. I'm not overly confident, which is good, but I'm also not pessimistic either. It's this positive belief in oneself. I also think my Saturn return isn't going to be hard because I have a day chart. Saturn is not difficult for me. Mars is more difficult. Mars is my malefic because I have a day chart and sun ruled. But the other reason is because my Saturn is enclosed by the benefics, and Jupiter are both sending a ray and almost enclosing and protecting Saturn within a sign-based orb. You can also look at degrees. The stronger the degree, usually within 5 degrees is nice, 3 degrees is nice. But looking and seeing where your two benefics, Jupiter and Venus, are, and seeing how they're affecting or hitting your natal Saturn. And
So I wanted to show you guys my transits and my natal chart and some things I'm predicting for what's to come, and also show this as kind of a cool learning opportunity to kind of see, what you can predict for your own Saturn return. I've got some really gnarly transits coming up, actually. I'm a little nervous about them, but, the thing about astrology is often the things you think that are going to happen, it usually ends up not as bad as you think it's going to be, honestly. For the past quite a few months, I've had Saturn opposite my moon. And so this has been going on since, let me show you the transits and how it works. So you can see here, December 2022, Saturn was at 19 degrees Aquarius, and my natal moon is here in the inner ring, and my moon is at 21 degrees Leo. This whole story of Saturn opposite moon, this is a tricky transit that I've been going through for the last year. It's a time of, feeling rejected or feeling like an outcast or feeling a little lonely or isolated. It's kind of a more inward time of, going within oneself, healing healing the self and taking care and nurturing, your inner emotions, your connection with childhood or the mother. It's a very sensitive and emotional transit for people. This Saturn moon opposition has not been as difficult as I thought it would be. I was predicting it to be actually way worse. But here's where things, I wonder, get a little bit more challenging. So you can see here, Saturn is going to enter Pisces on March 7th. So let me pull that up for you so you can see it. I'm sorry, March 8th. March 8th is the day that Saturn enters Pisces, and it's going to be at 0 degrees Pisces. You can see it here in the transits. And then my Chiron is at 3 degrees Virgo. Chiron is a sore spot in, our natal chart. It's kind of where we're triggered, where we're sensitive, where we're wounded, or where we feel rejected in life. And so having this Saturn, starting the Saturn return, and right away, I'm going to feel it because that is opposite my Chiron within 3 degrees. And so it's going to be building up. You can see Saturn is going to start moving. Once we get to end of March, 1 degree, then we're going to get up to 2 degrees once we hit end of March. And then, Saturn's going to be at 3 degrees in the beginning of April, and that's going to be right opposite my Chiron. So, I wonder if I feel very rejected or criticized, or if I'm just doing a lot of deep healing around, wounds with friendship, or healing wounds around, being accepted by others. I have Chiron in the 11th house, and the 11th house is your hopes and your dreams and the ability to believe in oneself in terms of your dreams in life. But it's also, the 11th house is the following, the community. It's also friendships, like groups of people. I think this Saturn is going to trigger it for sure. And so I don't think this is going to be an easy time for me. But we'll see. I mean, my Saturn moon opposition was definitely not as difficult as I thought it would be. It was definitely a lonelier year, but nothing that was really too difficult. But here's where things get really interesting. So you can see here, Uranus in beginning of May. Uranus is at 18 degrees Taurus, right on my south node. Which is fun. And, Uranus rules instability, volatility, suddenness. And typically with Uranus transits, if it's ever squaring, specifically a hard transit, like a square or an opposition, these can be times when there can be major success or a major downfall, like some kind of suddenness that is really, really felt. And you could see it's squaring my MC, my public reputation, my social reputation, my career, my public persona, like, the work I do. Like, it's really squaring that and challenging that. And the MC, which is the most highly visible part of your chart. It's the top of your chart. It's where you're most seen, most visible before the public. So you could see here that square, sudden volatility affecting the career. And this is happening in May. And it's going to get stronger once that Uranus starts, getting closer. You could see here it's applying or forming. That Uranus will be at 19 degrees, squaring my MC exactly in May, by end of May. And then, we're going to get into June. And June, Uranus will be at 20 degrees, and it'll be, squaring my moon really. So what does this mean? I mean, Uranus square the moon can be sudden volatility with emotions, wanting to be different, wanting to stand out, wanting to really shake up your public image or how you're seen or visible, or just change your career completely, like really like rebelling against what other people may see you as. And so I think I'm really going to have to keep a close eye on that. And that is, one of my flaws that I have personality wise is I'm a rebel, completely a rebellious person. And so I can be very erratic when I feel challenged or threatened, or wanting to be different, wanting to be rebellious when other people want me to conform. And so I got to be careful of my temper with that Uranus squaring the moon. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm also a little worried that this transit specifically might have something to do with my mom. The moon in astrology often represents the mother. For me, in my chart, the moon is definitely connected to my mom. And so I wonder if, there might be some difficulty with my mom, like a suddenness or something that can be difficult. And, while this is all happening, that Saturn return is going on, So the thing to keep in mind is when a planet is conjunct, meaning, it's within a few degrees, 3 to 5 degrees of your natal planet, it's kind of like when a transiting planet is right on top of your natal planet. So for instance, Uranus here at 20 degrees Taurus in June of this year will be conjunct my south node at 23 degrees, within 3-degree orb, that will be conjunct because it's sitting right on top of it. Whereas a square is when there's a hard, challenging, or there's just tension. There's some sort of tension being put on another planet. More like a pressurized kind of energy. And so when Uranus is at 20 degrees Taurus, it will be making a hard square, that little red line here, to my natal moon at 21 degrees. That's just 1 degree off. So that's a very strong, close square. And it's forming, it's applying. So it's moving forward and moving closer to that 21 degree. So those are just some things to keep in mind with your own Saturn is, if you're going through your Saturn return or you're going through a hard transit, is really look at the aspects that are hitting that natal planet. Also, another thing you could really consider is I would really recommend going into your annual perfections and seeing, what is your activated planet and the activated house for your year. So for instance, for me, until my birthday, I am in a Pisces year. So I am in a 5th house year. Saturn will be activated during those last 2 months of that perfected year until, my birthday. And, come my birthday, Mars will be the activated planet for the year, and Aries, which is my 6th house, will be the more activated house, or the area of life that's more turned on for me. So, a lot going on. I think I worry about March. I worry about that Chiron Saturn, no lie. Even as an astrologer, I feel very much removed, and I approach astrology with a very stoic, detached mindset because you have to. You can't live in fear with astrology. You can't. That will drive you nuts. It's not healthy. And so for me, I have learned to really remain stoic and observational and non-emotional to astrology when I'm looking at things like this. But even me with my own stuff, I see something like this. I see this, Saturn applying to that Chiron and that opposition. And I'm like, what is, it's a lot to take in. So I will keep you guys posted on kind of what happens. I'll probably do a little check-in video. But yeah, I hope that this helps, gives you some information on what to expect.
The thing about Saturn is it's really important to ask yourself at the beginning of your Saturn return, what do I want out of my life? What do I really want out of life? What do I want to be? What do I want to do with my life? And what work do I need to do to get there? These are just my predictions. These are just my predictions of what I think is going to happen to me during the Saturn return. I wanted to make this video and just put it up on the internet because, it's just fun. It's just fun to document a little slice of time. And honestly, I may not be the same person when I'm done with the Saturn return. I might be a completely different person 2.5 years from now. So I wanted to record this little slice of time. Here it is, putting it on the internet. That's what I'm predicting for my Saturn return. I may go hermit a little bit during that time. I may go quiet. We'll see. I hope not. I hope that no matter what, I'm still creating and still connecting with self-expression and the need to create things, because it is through creation and through the art of creativity that we connect with our heart and we connect with our inner voice, and we lead from this place of raw vulnerability and honesty that comes straight from the heart. And it is such a beautiful energy to feel. And I love it. If you like this video, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Let me know what your Saturn return, what you went through during your Saturn return. I'd be really curious to hear what issues you went through, and also what house your Saturn was in, because that will give more context onto the area of life that your Saturn return, the themes that came up for you. And if you wanted to watch my other video on the Saturn return, I'll include it here. And check out my blog post if you want to read more about the Saturn return or astrocartography. I've got tons of astrology content on my blog, and lifestyle stuff too. Tons of content. All the content. But have a magical day and happy travels.